focusing now on animal law, a course for legal education in the 21st century. And very pleased to welcome Dr. Simon Brooman, who is Senior Lecturer in Law at the Liverpool John Moores University, a Fellow of the Oxford Centre for Animal Ethics, Senior Fellow of the Higher Education Academy, and Seeds Award winner 2020 from the International Society of Animal Rights. And also Dr. Deborah Legge, who is an Associate Lecturer at the Open University, where she has taught on subjects including public law, criminal law, and research methods. And they are jointly going to be speaking about what are described as 21st century issues and threats to humankind and animal law. I won't take up any more time, but I'll hand over, I think, first to Simon.
Okay, thanks. I just need to share the screen if that's okay. And then cool. Debbie's going to start us off. Okay. Off we go.
Okay, great, thanks. So we're going to be talking about why we started the animal law course, why we think it's important at the moment. We're going to consider how to teach animal law, and then where animal law is going in the future. So, Simon, go to the next slide, please. So where it all began, it was actually a student-led initiative. We were standing in a corridor, and a student suggested to us, we were talking about various things, that we might want to do an animal law course. I was already teaching environmental law, and I'm a public lawyer, and Simon is a common law lawyer. He teaches contract and tort. And so we went out into Abercromby Square, sat in the sun, and basically put together the animal law course, which is essentially what Simon teaches now. So why did we think animal law was important? Go to the next slide, Simon. Well, really it's come to the fore now in relation to COVID-19. So obviously this wasn't around when we did the course, but I think it highlights for both of us why animal law is so important and why it's an important course to teach. So it raises a number of different issues through COVID-19, for example, the use of animals in experimentation for the new drugs needed to treat COVID-19. Obviously, there's the issue of food and where COVID-19 originated. So although we're not sure about where it came from, there is a concern about the wet markets, which are where animals are basically traded while they're still alive. But there is definitely potential and links for jumps between animals and humans in relation to epidemics. It has an impact on tourism. As tourism has stopped, obviously people can't move around the world. That has a massive impact on wildlife conservation in good and bad ways, really. In good ways, obviously, people are flying around the world so much, and in terms of wildlife conservation, projects that are harmful might not be happening. But also it causes a problem because safaris might not be happening, and it might lead to economic problems. It might lead to land being used for agriculture instead, and even poaching. In the UK, there's been a lot of financial concerns around zoos. I mean, obviously, again, zoos are a controversial area, but they do provide a measure of conservation for some animals. But there's a real concern about how they are going to survive, particularly in the UK, where COVID has had a really large financial impact on the economy. There's been an increase in animal cruelty cases in the UK as well due to the lockdown that we've also encountered. And so, and the international development of animal law is really on the back burner a little bit, actually, because like the CUHK, the international agreements for climate change, the biodiversity agreements have all been put back to next year. And so, we basically can't move on really with animal law or environmental law at the moment. But there are some really interesting discussions to be had about global extinction targets, like we have with climate change. And I think the international development of animal law is shown by COVID-19, which has had an international, it's not just about the UK and the impact on the UK, habitat reduction throughout the world. It could lead to new epidemics, as I said, as we move into areas of natural, the environment, natural habitats really, which could lead to a clash between animals and humans. So lots of areas there where animal law is really important, and I think essential really to our understanding of COVID-19 in some ways. Can we move on, Simon? Thanks. So when we were developing animal law, it was always going to be from a socio-legal perspective. I studied law at the University of Sheffield, which at the time had a very strong socio-legal framework. I did an MA in socio-legal studies, and my PhD was in socio-legal studies. And Simon was very naturally a socio-legal lecturer as well. He understood the issues. So although we knew it was important to frame and implement, set out the law, it's obviously important, it was a law course, but we thought it was important to know the law and to frame it in consistency with previous cases and to know the regulations. But we also thought it was really important to set it in its historical context, to look at the philosophical discussions around it, also to look at the scientific debates around animal law. There is an element of the politics in it, although we managed to sort of avoid too much nastiness, which can actually come, it's very polarising and very passionate, the animal debate. But we've had a little bit of, when we first published the book, which Simon will talk about, there were some kickbacks from that. But generally, I think the political side with a small p, we've managed to negotiate that quite well, I think, throughout the way we've taught it in the courses. Really important to understand the practical effect, and that's what I've just talked about in relation to the COVID-19. And really important, obviously, knowing the content, but also the context of law. That was always really, really important in the way that we have developed the course. Okay, so I'm now going to move on to Simon, who I left John Moores University and I left Simon to it. So I'm going to leave Simon to now chat about how we developed the animal law course, and in particular how Simon has taken it forward.
Okay, thanks, Debbie. I just, first of all, a swift intermission. Some publications. Debbie and I, as Debbie said, we wrote the book in 1997. It didn't get as far as we would have hoped, because I think it was very much a germinal subject at the time. In fact, it's been probably the last 10 years that people have really caught on to it, particularly in the United States. But anyway, if you want it, it's out of print now. I've got quite a lot of copies, but there's the chapters we put on ResearchGate because we hold the copyright for it now. So if you want to see some of these chapters, they are on ResearchGate. If you search mine or Debbie's name, there's an article I did in 2017 when I was, as Debbie said, Debbie left around 2000, but I carried on teaching animal law, and it went through its ups and downs. Last year it had 75 students, final year students studying it. It is a very popular module, and I reckon there's been probably 2,000 students. I thought the story needed to get out there, so I wrote it in the Liverpool Law Review in 2017. That's the second article that you can see there, and I was quite taken aback with the uptake on that. That's been downloaded nearly 6,000 times now, and that really took me aback. I wasn't expecting that, and Debbie and I have. We're back together writing, and we've got one coming out again in the Liverpool Law Review in about 3 or 4 weeks. It's just in press. We've reflected on 25 years of it, and we're looking at the international crime of animal ecocide as a spin-off from what we reflected upon, which has been really interesting. So I just want to go through now just basically how this is done. This is a traditional module set up on a UK law degree. It's a final year subject, and as Debbie says, the main things that go through are all related to the socio-legal kind of context of animal law. I tend to steer away from the black letter nitty-gritty. I'm not naturally a doctrinal lawyer at all, and so the contextual thing really excites me, and the looser and looser I've become with the structure of my lectures, it seems the more that it's grabbed the attention of students. So you can see roughly the subjects that we cover: experimentation, wildlife, international protection of animals, biotechnology, EU. Obviously, we've got Brexit going on, which is causing chaos, fur farming and personhood. And these have changed as time has moved on. It is quite an exciting, fast-moving area. I find myself looking at the news at the beginning of September and thinking, okay, what are we going to do this year? And it's very, very fluid, which makes it very exciting in itself. Just in terms of how it, we assess it and how we put it together. Debbie and I did an article, which you can see on the left there, which was an animal welfare one about trading the transport in animals to the EU, and it was quite an interesting kind of format. So I've adopted that in recent years as a kind of different way at looking at students presenting their work, and it's they find it a bit of a challenge because it's new, very strict word limits and things like that. But it's proved to be quite popular to enable them to put an opinion of some area that is going on, which is what they do. So if you want to know some more about it, you can contact me. But it's proved to be quite an innovative and interesting way of assessing students. Terror at the beginning, but I think they take to it after a while. So that's the first part of the assessment, and then the second one is more traditional essay. But what is different about this is I very much like it to be student-led. Part of my my other hat, if you like, is education research, and I like students to have a bit of control of their learning. So I give them a set questions there. There they go. These were the set questions for this year. Fur farming again, badger culling, international court decision about Japan, and then control of experimentation. So a bit of a varied number, but I really encourage students to write their own titles, and we work out a research program based around that. And the marks tend to be absolutely fantastic. I think it's been commented on by externals as being a, really innovative and interesting kind of module. And it goes back to the way Debbie and I designed it. So, but it does have, all the traditional core things you need as a law student within it in terms of what you're writing, why you're writing, and how you're sourcing it. Student feedback's really good. It's always nice to see that this is actually this year's feedback. They like the debates that we have. Well, I call them arguments, but they call them debates. So we do have a lot of discussions. So there's first comment. I won't go through all these, but conscious of time. They really like the discussions. I love this module purely because of the philosophical elements. I'm pretty heavy on discussing the philosophy of animal law, personhood, what are rights and how they differ with human rights, etc. I think students like it because it is different. It's my favourite module of the whole year, and this is fairly typical. I think students like the way in which it is different. It really brings them into the modern world, I think the 21st century, because it is about all the issues which are in the news, and law is very, very famous for not being terribly outward looking, and I think this module is very outward looking, and particularly in these challenging times, it really piques their interest. So just finally, why teach it? I'll pass back to Debbie very quickly. Just because of the global issues, we think it's a big growth area. Just look at the USA figures. 1 to 5 courses in 1997, difficult to tell. I couldn't find them all. But when I did the study in 2017, it's 164. A lot of student interest, and I think there's huge research interest for us. So just back to Debbie quickly to summarise.
Yeah, no, I think because I've been out of it for a while, I can really see the value of it in the place of education. It's really crucial, and I think the more students that study animal law, the better, really. It gives them, as Simon said, it gives them a way of looking at the law that does look outwards, and it basically sort of informs other areas of law and is informed by them. So I think particularly for a third year subject, it can really draw together a lot of different issues. And it can be studied undergraduate, postgraduate, and at PhD level. We sort of hope that law schools and other disciplinary areas can, really sort of develop this. At the Open University, we have a third year subject, which basically students design their own research as well. They can do it on anything, you can't push the students to what they want to do. And unfortunately, I haven't had anybody do animal law yet, but hopefully, these are the sorts of areas where maybe animal law can find itself. It does give the students a voice in terms of being able to develop their own legal studies and to do some research and to develop all of those skills which they can then take forward. And it's a curricular fit for the modern era. It links curricula across discipline boundaries. It's we are both from very different public lawyer, common lawyer. We look at the international level, we look at national law, EU law. It really does, go across the discipline boundaries. It provides a study into humane education, and there's a lot of discussion about what law is for, and particularly as we move forward in terms of this, there's an idea about the ecology of law. And law is very much, it comes from a very particular background, and there's a question about how far that needs to move forward into the future. The impact of COVID-19 on education is going to be huge, not just obviously for it going online partially, something I have to say the Open University has been doing for many years, so it doesn't frighten us too much. But COVID-19, as I said at the beginning, the animal law basically really provides us with a way of looking at the impact of law on society and understanding it in its broader sense. I think it's really important to find a place for subjects like animal law, particularly in the UK, where we have the changes from the Solicitors Regulation Authority and Law Society, and making the law degree maybe more forming it more for the profession. It'd be a real shame to lose these types of subjects, which provide students with a broader education than maybe just looking at the formalistic sort of view of law in terms of just going into the profession. So there's some exciting things in terms of the future. We have Brexit to look forward to, which is going to have a big impact on law. We also have these law society changes, and we have COVID, and these provide both challenges and also provides us with some difficulties, I think, as we move forward. So,
Thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry, Sharon, the last bit.
Thank you very much indeed for both presentations.
Okay.
Sorry, Simon, were you going to come back?
It's okay. I'm just going to stop sharing. That's right. There we go.
Okay. There are a number of questions, and we've got just a little more than 5 minutes, so let's launch straight into them. From Julie, given that there are now some rivers and mountains that have been granted legal personhood and placed under protective legal guardianship, and following the animal advocates in the US who are campaigning for the legal personhood of some animals such as chimpanzees and elephants held in captivity and to relocate them into sanctuaries, is there any similar move in the United Kingdom to advocate for legal personhood for the great apes, such as gorillas, orangutans, chimpanzees, who are in captivity like zoos? If not, why do you think this is not happening?
Okay, I think I can take that one. I think the two traditions of legal education are very different. I think the US has been, well, I wouldn't say very successful. They've had some success in getting personhood off the ground. It's never really taken off so much in the US, and I think it's because of the different traditions of the way we approach law. I think there's probably a bit of a misconception, actually. The UK protects animals extremely well, and we got a bit complacent about it, certainly in legislative terms. And as we've seen with the sentience argument around Brexit, I think governments have been reluctant to move. So I would say I can see why it happened in the US. Different jurisdictions. Yeah, go on, Debbie.
Yeah, I think in the US they have they have ideas such as public interest doctrine, and they have a wider view in terms of this comes from environmental law as well. They have this idea of public interest, and they can actually, I think they can develop a wider view of what the law is than we do. I think particularly in the UK, law is very sort of based on individual private property interests. And so there isn't a lot of room sometimes to develop these ideas, whereas in the US with this idea of public interest doctrine, it does provide maybe some more, a sort of revision that there are public goods, I suppose is what I'm trying to say. And although that doesn't seem to answer the question, in the US they've been much more forward in terms of looking at the philosophical arguments for animal welfare and animal rights, and a lot of the writing has come from the US. So I don't know, Simon, I think, would you agree?
I think that's, yeah, I think we're quite a long way behind, to be honest.
I mean, there are lots of,
sorry.
There are lots of ideas out there, such as, as I said, sort of international, and that's the way it's got to go, is international controls global protections, really, and to have these debates at a global level.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'm only sort of rushing because we've got very few minutes left. There's a question from Michael Lower to Simon, which is, Simon, do you encourage students to produce the short communication pieces? If not, would you publish, I think question relates to blog posts. Simon, are you back?
Yeah, I don't quite understand the question. Do I encourage them to publish them? Oh, there he is. Hello, Michael.
Yeah. Sorry, it's probably my reading of it, but have you got the question now?
I think it's correct. Do I ask them to publish them? No. Yeah. Right. Okay. No. We haven't actually sent them. We've had a couple of postgrad students who have published in the Animal Law Journal, the UK Journal of Animal Law, and there's a student version of it as well. But those aren't published as such. But it's something that I'm developing in the last 2 years to push students to, if they're really good, really coherent, really put an argument together, to push towards certainly the student. It's animal justice. A-Law, I haven't mentioned A-Law, they're doing a lot of really good work, and they've got this student publication, which is where we've had a couple of publications.
It's worth explaining A-Law, because A-Law is it's a group of animal lawyers and students, and it transcends universities, which might be quite important as university courses get they do bite-sized things of law, and anybody who's interested in animal law might want to join the A-Law thing, just to give them a plug.
Right. And then I think we've probably got time for one more question, which comes from Pauline Collins. Sorry, I've lost it on the screen for a moment. Sorry, bear with me. Yes, do you find that such a course attracts vegans and those who support wild law? And your presentations are described as fascinating. So, question.
Well, I've actually got a PhD student who's the first animal law student I've had studying at PhD. Julie Boyd, she gave a presentation yesterday. She's looking at wild law because there's a lot of crossovers, obviously. Do vegan? Yeah, I think probably every vegan on the LLB certainly gets attracted to the course, and if they aren't vegan beforehand, quite a few of them are afterwards, which is quite interesting. I do get a lot of stories about that. Students do say that this is life-changing because they are exposed to everything that's going on. And I think it does have an effect. If not vegan, certainly vegetarian. We have lots of arguments about eggs.
Right. Fine. We actually got 1 minute left, so I'll ask the question posed by Mr. Rawat, which is this. And it's directed at Debbie. Do you propose that killing any animal, even for food, should be made punishable under animal law?
Oh, that's an interesting one, isn't it?
In 1 minute, Debbie, in 1 minute.
Yeah, thank you. I can't answer that in 1 minute. I think what we try to do in animal law is encourage those sorts of questions. We can't necessarily, we have our own views, and but it is great. Those are the questions we want the students to ask, and those are the questions we want the world to debate, really. It's not for us to say one way or the other, but those are the questions we want asked, and those are the questions we want legislators around the world and lawyers in any profession to ask themselves those questions, whether they're commercial lawyers or property lawyers. These are questions which influence us all, so that would be my answer.
Yeah.
You're not prepared to give us an insight to your own thinking on this matter.
Personally, I think prosecution. Yeah, I mean, we're a long way from that.
Right.
I think it's speculation. I think we're a long way from that.
All right.
Mind you, a couple of the Greek philosophers did think that killing animals was murder. I'll leave it at that and allow you to read chapter 1 of Brooman and Legge, which we look at that.
If that had been carried through as a policy, then us criminal lawyers would be even busier than we are.
Very, very busy. We're only trying to create work for you.
Look, thank you so much. It's, really, really different approach. So, really fascinating. I've never come across animal law myself, and I'm sure everyone's found it really interesting. And in fact, your response to your presentations is summed up by our next speakers. Good way of introducing Rachel O'Connor, who says, quote, "I think this module sounds brilliant. I would love to study it. Such an important topic, and one which I think will be of huge appeal to our current generations and future generations of students." So that saved me trying to find more complimentary things. Thank you both very much.